Now, Pooh Shiesty'S life in prison so far has definitely been far from easy. From being one of the biggest rappers in 2021 to now sitting in a jail cell awaiting trial to start, here's what Shiesty's been doing while behind bars. We have so much to talk about in this video, so let's get straight into it. Now, I guess Pooh Shiesty was not lying when he said, "I got my own fire, I don't need security in the club," as Shiesty was seen performing at the King of Diamonds club with around $40,000 hanging out of his back pocket. When performing for the huge crowd, people on the front stage started swatting at the cash, and that is when all the cash then fell out of his pocket and all over the floor for all of the fans to grab and basically make a dash for it out of the club. Now, Pooh Shiesty got very upset and angry to the point where he ended up leaving the club as well, but that wasn't until he pulled out his firearm and then used it allegedly towards his security guard, and worst case for Shiesty is that there was witnesses at the scene. Now, after this incident, Shiesty, he was then on the run just for a few days before turning himself into jail, as there was a warrant out for his arrest from law enforcement. Now, here is where things turned very bad for Pooh Shiesty, as on June 8th, we ended up seeing Shiesty turn himself into jail. Fast forward just a few days after turning himself in, Shiesty had a court hearing and things got even more concerning as we ended up seeing Pooh Shiesty show up to his bail hearing wearing what's called a turtle suit. Now, typically, when you're in jail, if you're having a very hard time, you're seen crying in your jail cell, saying things about your own well-being, anything in that nature, about 98% of the time, law enforcement will then put you in what is called a turtle suit. When you are wearing a turtle suit, you cannot do anything to yourself as you probably could with just regular clothing. Now, this is a very touchy subject to talk about, but judging from seeing him inside of a turtle suit inside of his court hearing, Pooh Shiesty's life behind bars as of right now has definitely been far from easy. So all of this information actually ended up being released when Shiesty was told information about Florida's 10-20 life rule. Now, the legal system in Florida has a very strict ruling. This means that you will be put in prison for 10 years if you pull out a firearm without a firearm license. You'll be put into prison for 20 years if you pull out a firearm and use it without defending yourself, but no one in the end was affected by it. And then you will be sentenced to 25 years to life in prison if you pull out a firearm, use it towards someone, and that person is then affected by it and it wasn't self-defense. Now, Pooh Shiesty, he was caught by witnesses using a firearm towards someone and was also caught on surveillance footage in a completely other case using it towards 2 people, meaning 3 people in total were affected by Pooh Shiesty using a firearm in points where he was not using it for self-defense, meaning he should be facing around 60 years in prison for these court cases if found guilty, that is. Now, yes, obviously hearing that news would cause anybody to end up being in a turtle suit. Anybody would be crying in a jail cell wondering why they just did that. Now, if you're wondering on how it even happened, a little over a year ago, Pooh Shiesty met 2 individuals inside of a parking lot. Shiesty arrives driving a bright green McLaren sports car, meanwhile his friend arrives driving what looks like to be a Mercedes. When Shiesty and his boys arrive, they ended up hopping out of their sports car to meet the 2 men. They were originally supposed to be buying high-end sneakers, as well as some narcotics as well. And well, Shiesty got to know these 2 men a little bit during this incident. Even let one of the 2 sit in his all green McLaren and look at the dash of the car just a bit. Now, while that guy was sitting in the green McLaren, Shiesty was actually discussing the deal with the other man about the sneakers and narcotics, and that is when Shiesty ends up turning this into a complete robbery. Allegedly, Shiesty then pulls out a firearm, uses it towards the two men. He hit one in the hip, he hit another one in the backside, and that's where things got crazy as Shiesty scrambled to pick up the sneakers and narcotics, hopped back into his McLaren with all of the goods, but while rushing and grabbing the sneakers and narcotics, he did not realize that a Louis Vuitton bag actually ended up falling right out of his McLaren door. Now, in this Louis Vuitton bag, well, there was $40,912 all in cash, and well, you're not gonna believe this, but Shiesty, he uploaded several photos to his Instagram of him doing the famous money stretch thing across his body, and well, the feds, they had a hunch that it was Shiesty at the parking lot, but had no way to prove it. That was until they found the Louis Vuitton bag. They ended up downloading and zooming in on one of Pooh Shiesty'S Instagram photos where he was doing the money stretch. Now, funny enough, due to their very excellent technology, they were able to zoom in and get a clear picture on all of the serial numbers on the bills of his Instagram account. And well, believe it or not, one of the bills in the Louis Vuitton bag actually ended up matching one of the bills that were on his Instagram. This proves that not only was this money Pooh Shiesty'S, but this also proves that Shiesty was the one at the parking lot on that day who used a firearm towards two individuals. What Shiesty didn't even realize during this altercation as well is that there was a complete police department literally just a few buildings away. The police ended up arriving to the scene so fast to the point where if Shiesty even wanted to turn around to try to grab that Louis Vuitton bag, he wouldn't have even been able to, as law enforcement arrived to the scene literally within a minute. As sitting there at the police department, they even heard the firearms go off and immediately hopped into their vehicles and rushed to the scene. Now, an Instagram photo will actually be getting used against Shiesty in court, which is pretty severe evidence, as everyone knows that photo evidence is very valid in court. What's even worse for Shiesty is that this parking lot, it had surveillance cameras as well. Shiesty was actually going to be getting hit with federal charges of conspiracy to possess firearms with an act of robbery, as well as using the firearms if he is found guilty in this case. It has been said that Shiesty will be facing a maximum of 20 years in prison for each conspiracy to possess firearm during the robbery. As it's pretty clear, this was not an act of self-defense, but if you enjoyed today's video and you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. It's been District Trending and I'm ending the video here. I'm out. Peace.